Anderson Advisors has been a partner of the Best Ever Conference for over half a decade now, and every year they bring together great content to help you manage your balance sheet legally, financially, operationally, such that you can maximize your taxes, maximize your protection in your individualized states of wherever you hold your assets. So, unfortunately, Clint wasn't able to make it with us. It sounds like he got a stomach bug, but he backfilled with an exceptional human that I just met backstage, Michael Bowman, who's been a partner with Anderson Advisors for years. Welcome to the Best Ever Conference.
So I got a call from Clint this morning. He said, "Hey, are you sick?" I'm like, no, I'm feeling really good. He's like, "Oh man, I've been sick to my stomach ever since we golfed yesterday." And I said to myself, I know I beat you pretty badly, but I didn't mean to make you sick. But anyway, I've been partners with Clint for about 20 years, and it's been a wild ride. Been fantastic. And I think it comes from the passion that we have for investors and kind of what we do ourselves. We all start off investing. I've ridden stocks up. I've ridden the housing market up and down. I've made a lot of mistakes. Clint's made a lot of mistakes. And it comes from those mistakes that gives us our passion. Because we'd rather have you learn from our mistakes and our other clients' mistakes as opposed to your own. And so if we look at it since 1999, now I'm really proud of this whenever I see 1999, because most businesses don't last that long. And what's been really cool over the last 5 years is I consider ourselves a multi-generational law firm. And the way it is, the reason why I say that is I just had a conversation with one of our original clients. His name's Eddie. And now Eddie's still a client, but now his children are still clients. How cool is that for Eddie to be a client for that long, but also bring his kids in here? So, preserve, protect, and prosper is our mission statement to help our clients do that. And we look at you guys all very, very differently because you're so different from the rest of the people in this city right now who are shopping, spending money. You guys are sacrificing, working hard for a better future, and so we respect you guys for that. We do have clients all over the world, and we have employees all over the country. And so we really focus on helping clients in each of the states. We set up business entities in all 50 states and also trusts and helping you guys protect and keep more of what you're earning. Now, these are my partners here. When I look at Clint Coons, I get the question with Clint, is he actually an attorney or just a male model? Okay, he is an attorney, okay, and a very, very astute attorney. He's very, very smart. My other partner, Toby Mathis, he's a tax whiz. He develops a lot of the tax strategies. He has a passion for the tax code. Now, I know the tax code, but he's got a passion for it. If I wanted to get to sleep, I can read the tax code. Toby won't be able to sleep if he reads the tax code. He'll be so excited about the different things. And then myself as a partner. Now, I started off my legal career in litigation. I like to say that I'm a recovering litigation attorney. I went through a 12-step program. I still attend meetings and things like that. But what it did is it gave me a passion to help you guys, because I did plaintiff's work, and that was brutal work. And at times, it was hard to reconcile, looking at, a client on a plaintiff's side and then going after the defendant and actually taking some of that hard work that they put together. And I've watched defendants have to start over. Unfortunately, I've had new clients come in who have built up their assets and their portfolios and lose it all and have to start over. One of the worst cases just a few years ago was an elderly couple who had saved, built up a portfolio, got sued, and then they had to start over at an older age. And it's very, very, very tough. That's why asset protection is so important, is because you do sacrifice for those investments. And so we need to protect them from lawyers like I used to be, okay? And we need to put it in structures and keep it away, because again, we sacrifice so hard, and to rebuild is too tough. So just a quick thing that we do, we consider ourselves really an educational law firm. And so we do, we like to educate you because you guys become a better client. We can synergize with you guys. And then you guys can read the rest of this stuff. It's all about being your back office and getting you the support so you guys can go out and make money. Whenever I look at a presentation and I look at a client, or my attorneys that work for us look at a client, we divide you up into quadrants and take a look at different things. I wanted to point out, because I'm seeing a lot on the internet right now, where other attorneys are getting a little overzealous, and they're basically saying, even with your personal car, listen, I'm not an artist, but there's your car right there, all right? We'll have it a jet engine out of there. But they're saying, hey, put LLCs. You know, LLCs are so great for asset protection. Put your cars in LLCs. Own nothing, control everything. There's a tagline from that. Well, if you go overboard in the real litigation world, it could overall weaken your entire structure. So we don't worry about that. The things we want to talk about and the things we want to protect is your active businesses, if you're a GP, and also if you're a contractor, a chiropractor, any sort of service side of business, separate that out. And we separate that out not only from a liability standpoint, but we separate it out from a tax standpoint. A lot of times you'll just hear, hey, form an LLC. That's the way to go. LLCs are great. They're very versatile, but they'll forget the tax aspect of it. They'll separate the liability out, but they won't worry about the tax side of things. And then they end up paying about 15.3%. Does anyone in here know what 15.3% represents? Yeah, he said FICA. I like to call it FICA. Okay, because it sounds like a four-letter word, and to me it is. It's 15.3%. I call it FICA. I was speaking at another conference, and basically I said FICA, and they said that's a really bad word in German. I said, okay, well, guess what? FICA is a bad word to me anyway. So what we want to do is structure you from a standpoint for your active businesses. And then another thing is your no-risk assets. We want to protect that. It's your cash. It's what you're going to be investing in. It's so important to protect that because that's what's going to help you make more money. Does that make sense? If you lose that cash, you have to save up to get reinvested. And so we want to protect that. A lot of attorneys that I deal with for other clients, they overlook that part of things. When you look at it, your cash is king. We actually separate that out into what we call a banking LLC for your stocks and your MBAs or your massive business bank accounts. And so we want to separate that out. And then your risky assets. And that's going to be any sort of property. The problem with property from a legal standpoint or from an attorney standpoint is it's kind of a finger on the financial pulse of an individual. Now, when I was a plaintiff attorney, what I would do is I'd get the defendant's name, and then I would do an asset locator search. And I'd find all the properties in their names, even their personal residence, which in most states I couldn't have taken because of the homestead exemption, but I could get a little finger on the pulse of where they were at. I'd go ahead and I'd find out their address, the home address. Then I would look it up. And with that, I could find out the value. Before I had to call a real estate agent back when I was practicing litigation. Now I could just do a Zillow search, right? And then I could go to the county recorder's office, find out what kind of liens were on there, do a little bit of easy math, and I could find out how much equity was in there. And then I could determine whether or not that was a good potential plaintiff or defendant for the client. Right? It's like being qualified for a lawsuit. You want to be qualified for a lot of things, but a lawsuit is not one of them. So we want to have the privacy behind there. We want to keep it out of our own personal name. Now, when you look at a plan, too many attorneys play one chord or an accountant plays one note of the chord. They don't get into the entire breadth of it. When you guys are looking to design your plan, or if you're reevaluating the plan you have, you want to look at from an asset protection standpoint. It's got to blend in well with the tax planning. In fact, when we first started at Anderson, it was just legal. Asset protection, that's what we did. We were lawyers. We wanted to go ahead and set up business or legal structures. And what would happen is we'd work with a client and then send them to their accountant. The accountant would have questions, send them back over to us. They were like a ping pong ball going back and forth. You get it? How many people have ran into that situation where you go to your accountant, they say one thing, your attorney says another thing, and pretty soon you're too confused, you don't do anything. That happens way too often. So after a couple of years, we decided to go ahead and buy an accounting firm. And what we've taken this accounting firm and built it over, the last couple of decades. And what we did was we trained them to deal with you guys as investors. Does that make sense? So now the legal is talking to the accounting and forming a plan. And so you want to make sure it blends in, and it can. It's very easy to make sure that the accounting or the legal or the tax side of things complements the legal structure. And then business planning. We all went into the tax or accountant's office one time, and the accountant was so proud because guess what? He got us out of paying any taxes. With losses and everything, we showed a loss. We were really, really happy until what? You guys are all investors. What do we need? Money, right? We went in for loans. We were being denied. Yeah, we saved on taxes, but we didn't take into account the business planning side. I'm seeing a lot of people nodding their heads. They ran into the same thing. So we want to go ahead and blend that through. And then something that's extremely important to me, it became really important to me during COVID, is the estate planning side. Now, we'd have new clients coming in during that time. We had existing clients coming in that time. We had friends of clients calling us and saying, hey, we know you do estate planning. Can you quickly get this will or a trust, whatever they had? And guess what we had to say? No, the person's incapacitated. We can't do anything. Horrible situation to be in. And that's something that's been more of a passion since then. And it's something I would encourage you guys to do is get it off of Someday Island, bring it forth, and get your estate plans done. Because we work way too hard and sacrifice way too much, only to leave it when it's not designed properly. It can cause harm. Our investments, our hard work, our legacies can actually harm people. And the other thing is keep family relationships intact. You guys design it. But that's one thing I wanted to add in this presentation because of, this last week I had to deal with another one. And in the last 4 years, I've been dealing with a lot of estate planning issues, and it could have been taken care of just by a simple living trust. All right, let's look at the threats here. We want to understand something, and this is something where I want to do a foundational aspect, what I call bidirectional liability. And when I talk about bidirectional liability, the assets you own obviously cause you liability. A lot of people forget that you, your family, your children, they cause your assets liability. Does that make sense to everybody here? So you have to do it, and you have to create the structure based on these two threats. Owner-based liability and asset-based liability. And so, with syndications, a lot of times I'll hear people who are in with syndications, they'll say, hey, they're so safe. What are they forgetting here? Yeah, if you're just a limited partner, passive, you're getting the income, yeah, that's a safe asset. But where's the threat existing when I talk about owner-based liability or asset-based liability? It's you, right? So that's an asset. If it's not protected, then your judgment creditor can come after it. So we have to use it. So this is a structure we like to use. And we also want to carve out, if you're going to be a GP or a manager for the syndication, you want to carve it out. Use it for your acquisition fees, the management or the general partner activities. The other thing we can do is get it out of your personal tax code and into the business tax code. Does anyone understand the difference between the business tax code and the personal tax code? This is phenomenal. I didn't understand it when I was, just coming up in the world of my first business. I ran as a sole proprietorship. That was a dumb idea. Because the personal tax code, you earn money, and this is going to remind you guys of your first paychecks of your first jobs. With your personal tax code, you work the hours, you get that paycheck, but within that paycheck, it's your gross minus the taxes, and you just spend whatever's left over. That's the personal tax code. With the business tax code, you earn the money, you get to spend it out on so many business expenses. I mean, the business tax code is about that thick, if not thicker. And you get to spend it out before you're taxed on. Whatever's left over, then you're taxed on. So that's why we like to use a lot of corporations, is to flip the different elements of the equation so we're spending it out. The coolest thing about it is you guys are personally spending right now on things out of your personal account that if you get into that business tax code, you're still going to get personal benefit out of it, but it's a business-related expense. Cell phones, internet, things like that. Travel, that's a big one that I have taken a lot of use out of. Just there's so many business expenses out there. The other thing we want to do, with that GP using a corporation is the liability protection. So that if anything happens, it's safe inside that entity as opposed to you personally. Now, there's a lot of crossover with investors. I first started off to be as a stock investors, and the reason why I'm telling you guys this is because I know you guys like to diversify, okay? And so there's some things I wanted to make sure you guys understood. So I started off as a stock investor, I built an account up, and then I started to diversify out of it. And, kept a minor portion, but I rolled it over and started investing in single family homes. And then I, BRRRR method, I can't even nail the name, but it's buy, rehab, refinance, repeat. Basically, then I got more properties and more properties and more properties. And at the time, I was grouping properties together. So I'd have one LLC with a bunch of different properties. This is me. We're talking, you know how cheap LLCs are for me to make, right? I own a firm that makes them. But I was like, bring them all together, loop them all together. And then all of a sudden, it was actually Clint who was speaking at a conference. And this is actually I'm glad it was him up there, not me. Not that it was Schadenfreude, but the same thing is, he was up there speaking about, grouping properties together. An audience member, they say, hey, Clint, you're telling us to go ahead and group properties together. How do you do it? He goes, oh man, I don't want to lose any properties, so I go ahead and one property per LLC. And the audience member didn't stop there. And again, I'm in the back listening to this. And the audience member says, well, how come you're telling us to group properties if you don't do it? Is your money worth more than ours? And so we changed. We had to change out of there. And the big thing is we kind of looked at it. And if we lose one property, how long is it going to take us to go ahead and get that property, save for the down payment or save for the property, purchase it in cash? Because what that does, we lose a property, we lose our entire portfolio. That's our mailbox money. How many people in here like mailbox money? I call it mailbox money. That kind of dates me. I know I look like I'm 21, but it kind of dates me because I used to have to go out to the mailbox to get all the rent checks. Now everything's just electronically transferred. But here's the thing. We don't want to be cheap, put all the properties in one LLC or combine them. One property per LLC. It's going to look something like this. Basically, each property is going to have its own LLC, separated out. Thereby, if one has an issue, it's not all the properties are being lost in the lawsuit. Does that make sense to everybody? It's one of those things. That's the way we plan. We put a whole program called Titanium together so you can get unlimited LLCs so you can make the right decisions when you're developing your plan. The other thing I want to talk about is privacy. And this comes from, and why it's so important. I remember Toby Clinton, myself, we were talking about, hey, you know what? And you kind of learn it in law school of how to approach certain things. One of the things that we used to do back 20 years ago is we would just file the LLCs in the state where the property was located. The problem in doing that is those states make you tell who actually owns the LLC, and they make you tell who is the manager. So whose name has to go on in there? Yourselves, right? Thereby, me, the way I used to be, if I did an asset locator search, I started researching the entities. I found out that you were going ahead, you were the manager and the member. Now I could say, okay, I could kind of put together a financial aspect on you and go after you. So what we've done is we want to, and then you'll see this as a common theme with the way our structures are, is keep your name at a public record. You know what we want you to do? We want, if someone snoops around, like an attorney like I used to be, we want you guys to look like you guys could qualify for food stamps. Okay? Basically, because here's how it happens, and I can tell you, I've learned a lot over the years since I was a plaintiff's attorney. If I did an asset locator search, and what's your name? Jason. And I found Jason, and I started snooping around, and I'm like, he doesn't own he owns a car. I can find a car, but I can't find any of the real estate. You know what I would do? It'd be like attorney be gone. You know that stuff you sprinkle on couches and stuff so cats don't get on it, right? I'd come up to Jason. He's worthless. Why would I spend 3 to 5 years of litigation going after Jason who has nothing. Law firms are super expensive to run. You can't take cases that you cannot get paid out. Does that make sense? So guys, if you take something away, that's a takeaway right there, is go ahead and get your name out of public record, all right? The way we do it is with Wyoming. And we use Wyoming for a lot of different causes. Number one, because most of the state statutes look like this. And what we need to do is, it's evolved really horribly over the last, probably the last 15 years, is California allows judgment creditors to pierce in these entities. The original intent of the RUCLA, Revised Uniform Liability Company Act, was simply to protect the asset from the owners. California said that wasn't fair. And then it was a virus that went across the country, worse than COVID. Basically, it went to Colorado, then over to Florida, and they all weakened the asset protection. But 2 states kept the original intent, and that is Nevada and Wyoming. Nevada is quite cheaper and has a couple more benefits to it. But look at this statute here. This is why we do what we do. Look at the way, now the legislature, I don't have a lot of faith in legislatures, but what's cool about it is they nailed this one. Look at how they did it. They said, first of all, they used the word exclusive. Does that make sense to everybody? What is exclusive? Does that mean like the only, right? Well, they knew they were dealing with attorneys, so they said, well, an attorney is going to argue exclusive doesn't really mean exclusive. That's how attorneys are. And then they buttoned up all of other remedies the states has brought into it. So there's a foundational aspect. We want to go ahead and use that as the blocking entity between you and all your assets. So we have the bidirectional liability. Owner-based liability, they can't come in and affect your assets. And then from your standpoint or from the asset standpoint, it can affect you. All right, one thing you want to do is maybe take a picture of these slides, because I know a lot of you probably already have LLCs, but these are provisions you have to have inside your LLC operating agreements. This is not up for discussion whatsoever, okay? And with our Platinum program, we review all your documents for you, and when we get your old operating agreements, we're appalled at to how you guys, maybe your attorneys or whatever service drafted your operating agreements, and these provisions aren't in there. There's provisions in there that takes the asset protection and unwinds it. So I want you guys to all to have this checklist, and if you guys want to go ahead and review your operating agreements, make sure that they're in here and that your LLC provisions actually do what they should do and not weaken the overall intent. All right, so another thing we want to do is protect those syndication interests. If you're passive on it, we would separate that out, and then we would bring that interest down to the Wyoming LLC, okay? Again, what we're doing, creating a block between us and your assets. We're isolating and separating it out too to protect the assets from each other, all right? That's one of the things we want to make sure we do. Now, another thing I wanted to do was I wanted to talk because you know, if someone asks me what type of investor that I am, you know what I'll say? Whatever's going to make me money, right? So you might venture off, you might start off as stock, get into single families, get into syndications, and maybe find that perfect deal for a quick turn. The reason why I bring this up is this is being done very, very poorly lately. And I'm hearing a lot of people doing rehabs out of their own name. We want to do it from a liability separation standpoint. Do each of your rehabs, so if one of the rehabs has a problem, it doesn't affect the other ones. Does that make sense to everybody? Isolate, separate. That's going to be a common theme that we're talking about. The other thing, we want to have it owned by a corporation. The reason we want to have it owned by a corporation is so we can get the tax benefits from it, and us personally don't get tagged as a dealer. You can research dealer status and the ramifications on your own, but I'm going to tell you, you will overpay in tax if you get taxed as a dealer. No more 1031 exchanges, which I love 1031 exchanges, and everything's becomes active earned income. Does that make sense to everybody? And that's active earned income. What does that correlate back to? That FICA that I was talking about before. So now you're paying 15.3% extra on your deals. Okay, so you got to factor that into your financial statements if you do it poorly. All right. The other thing I wanted to point out is with your syndications, a lot of people are using retirement funds. Yes, we do want to separate that in its own LLC that's owned by your QRP or your qualified retirement plan and get it away, because a lot of people have inside their retirement funds, they go ahead and they have a lot of different asset classes. With a solo 401k, absolutely phenomenal. You get control and you're able to maximize that. Instead of paying someone to lose money in your retirement accounts by having a custodian, you're the custodian, you're in charge, and you're not paying those fees. So there's just a couple tidbits that I wanted to point out for you guys. As a fellow investor, as a person who's seen people rise up, come back down, getting negatively affected by the legal system, I hope you guys go ahead and get structured, get it out of your names, take advantage of the tax benefits, also the asset protection benefits, but get that estate plan in place, all right? For myself, Anderson Business Advisors, I wish you guys the best of success, not only in your personal lives, but in your investing, and thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. One more round of applause for Michael Bowman from Anderson Advisors. Thank you very much for your wisdom, sir.